Here we go.
Oh,
We're going live. Oh man, the second episode of Taylor Primetime is going live
we
on
are
YouTube.
there.
Yeah, I love it.
Awesome.
It's kicking off too. It's super fun to watch people start like jumping on and coming in, and it tells all of our YouTube followers that we're going. Hey, it's us. Did you?
I did, yeah.
Awesome. At least we're watching it.
Hey, I I'm our biggest fan.
I'm our second biggest fan.
I hope to be a fan.
You hope to be a fan?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. We're kicking
Well,
off. Started stream less than a minute ago. It's starting to tell people that we're going live. Hey, welcome back to Taylor Primetime. It's the second show we've ever done. I don't know if you guys got to see the first show, which was my sidekick up there in the corner. His name's Chris Sharp. We call him Sharpie.
What's up, everybody?
Sharpie. How'd you get that nickname?
Oh, that was sixth grade camp. There was like 3 Chris's in my class.
Yeah.
And so the camp counselor was like, "What's your last name?" And went to everybody, and they had just weird last names. So he just was like, "You're Sharpie now." So it it happened in sixth grade camp. It stuck. My dad calls me Sharpie. I think the only time I'm ever called Chris is at work.
Okay.
But yeah,
Call you Sharpie. I kind of like it.
yeah, you guys can do that.
Yeah. And then we have a special guest with us tonight, Andy Lund. He's our export sales manager and manages the Asian region, the entire all of Asia or parts of Asia.
hi guys. Parts of Asia, the northern parts these days. I have in the past done Australia to China. These days, I'm working mainly in the northern parts of Asia.
Well,
Andy, how long have you been at Taylor Guitars?
About 15 years, I think.
Yeah. Another long one. We got to have Jay catch up. When I first started a while back, Andy was actually one of our domestic sales within the States and moved on to a couple different areas in town. Just, man, globetrotting. I feel like when you come into the factory and I see you, I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen Andy in months, because he's all over the place all the time with dealers all across the world. It's really cool. You have a fun job, it seems.
Chris. I haven't seen you for like 3 months or something like that. I think probably because since I went on, I did get to go out on the road one time this year. We went to Australia and we spent some time in Manila also.
Yeah.
But then we got called back in mid March, early March, actually, right before this all hit the fan. And so I think the last time I would have seen you would have been in February or something.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody that I work with.
that we got out
I
of
saw you. Yeah. Last time I think I saw you was like January, February, and you had a shaved face.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, what's going on here? So anyway, welcome everybody. We got people rolling in. Everybody, make sure you share this with your friends. Tell them to jump on live with us. We're doing this every Tuesday and Thursday for who knows how long. Maybe we'll do it forever. It's great. Again, my name's Jay Parkin. I'm your host here at Taylor Primetime. We got Chris Sharp up in the corner and our special guest Andy Lund down down at the bottom, maybe, hopefully, in your screen. I don't know how your screen looks, but that's how my screen looks. Anyway, and going live here on YouTube, and it's great. So, what is Taylor Primetime? If you missed our show with Bob Taylor on Tuesday, Taylor Primetime is just we want to bring everything, any sort of knowledge that we have from the factory, the Taylor factory, and get real nerdy about guitars. On Tuesday, we had a chance to sit down with Bob Taylor, and when Bob goes, you give him a chance to talk. He likes to talk and tell stories, and he's full of wisdom, and that was a good time. So that still is on our YouTube channel. You can find it. It's episode 1 of Taylor Primetime with Bob Taylor. And this episode, we are talking about. This is a great one. Why does the acoustic guitar shape matter? Why does the acoustic guitar shape matter? Apparently, the shape of the acoustic guitar, Andy. Andy's our subject matter expert here, so we're going to drill him with questions, and I hope you guys do too in the live feed. Andy, does the shape of the acoustic guitar matter, and why?
Definitely. As we were talking about this first episode, and by the way, thank you for having me on it, and I'm very honored to be with you and Sharpie, and looking forward to contributing to this, and hopefully we can do some more cool stuff in the future. We have at Taylor Guitars for the over 10 years we've done this thing called Roadshow, and at a roadshow, customers come to a local music store, they sit down in chairs, and they get to go listen to an hour or 2 hour long presentation about the size of guitars, the wood that the guitars are made out of, Taylor philosophy, Taylor innovation. It's actually more of an educational experience for your ears and for your mind, and to get you thinking about things that you might not know about with guitars, because like you say, we nerd out on it big time. So the Roadshow concept has always been a really fun one, and I've been lucky to been part of it for the whole time that I've been at Taylor. And the thing that's refreshing about it, and the thing that's cool about it, and I guess what keeps it fresh, is that we always have new things to talk about. We have new designs. We're a really innovative company. Since Andy Powers has joined our company and taken over the design from Bob Taylor, we have all of Andy's stuff to talk about. But one thing that has remained consistent throughout the Roadshow messages through the years is that we have this concept, we have this thought and this formula that we call the tone equation. And we believe that the tone of an acoustic guitar is made up of three main parts. We believe that the shape of the guitar is one of the main contributing components to the sound. The wood that the guitar is made out of is number two. And the third thing that makes a huge difference in the way the guitar sounds is the player. And I love doing roadshows, and I always ask people, I say, hey, we got this equation. There's these three things that make up sound. And I always ask, does anybody know what the third thing is? And everybody, of course, thinks about a technical thought. First of all, they say, the bracing? And they say, craftsmanship? And they say, glue? So of course, that's what you would think of. And then I say, well, it's kind of a trick question. And really, the player has so much to do with the sound of a guitar, because I can hand any of the guitars that I'm going to play tonight to Jay and have him play the same song that I play, and they can sound like two different guitars in two sets of hands.
Oh, 100%, especially if you hand it to me, because I only can four. I'm a bass player, but it's cool. And then you got this guy up in the corner who plays upside down or backwards. It's weird.
One of those guys.
Yeah. Lefty man over there. Do we have any left-handers watching right now? We love you. We're just joking, but we love to give him a little bit of grief up there in the corner.
Paul Tobias is here.
What's up, Paul?
Paul Tobias?
Tobias Music. Awesome.
All right. So let's continue that tone equation question here, or discussion.
Right.
So the tone equation, we got the three pieces of the tone equation. So maybe let's get into some guitar shape basics.
Right. So as you and I discussed what we're going to talk about on this show, I thought this show kind of gives us a little bit more time to get into a specific thing like shapes. And as I was sort of reflecting about it and thinking about what I wanted to say, because we have a little more time, more time than at a roadshow, I think that all three of those components, the shape, the tone wood, and the player, all mean different things to the guitar player at different times of their playing careers, so to speak. So what I mean by that, and as a basic example, if you think about, there are very obvious things that make the shape important. Probably the most obvious to even to a player who only knows two chords, just beginning, is the size of it, right? If somebody is not a real tall person, playing a big guitar is not going to be comfortable. That's obvious. When you're a child, you have a particular size bicycle that you drive around on for a while. You get taller, you get a bigger bicycle, and then in the end, there's a couple sizes. There's usually like there's a size for guys and there's a size for women. Just smaller frames. So
Sure.
that is really obvious, I think, to anybody. And so that's the beginning of it, I think, for a lot of people. And you know what? Comfort is really important. And if you're going to sit down, and many of us work all day long, we have a little bit of time to come home and sit on the couch and chill out a little bit, play a few chords, try to learn a new song. And that time that you have, you should be as comfortable as possible, right? So part of what I'm going to talk about in a minute is just how that body size actually fits into that comfort equation for somebody. Yeah. So that's an obvious thing when somebody starts out. Each of the sizes of the guitars that we make 5 different body shapes for full-size guitars. And each of the body shapes have slight little nuances within them. And those slight nuances and design elements affect the sound. And getting back to like what I was saying about when you're a beginner, you may not know what kind of sound you want. You might not even be able to hear the difference, really. I don't know that when I started playing guitar in 7th or 8th grade, I don't know that I could have heard the difference between a mahogany and a rosewood guitar. Probably not.
Time out. You've been playing guitar for 104 years?
100, well, and these last 3 months, 104 years and 3 months. Yes, that's right.
Wow, that's incredible. We had a really wonderful comment over here and it said, for a minute there, I thought you were talking to Bob Weir. That would have been amazing however, I'm sorry. I'm going to throw him under the bus real quick.
They're not disappointed.
That is Andy Lund. Yeah. Be nice.
But Andy, as you speak to that, it is so important for a beginner player to have a guitar that's comfortable, because you're not going to get those sounds that you're getting on your favorite songs because you're learning all these chords and everything. But as long as you're comfortable playing that guitar, you're going to want to go back to it. If you're fighting against it, you're just going to do something else, right?
Definitely. Super important. And, learning guitar is not impossible, but it's not easy. Honestly, it's not an easy thing to do. However, there are millions of us who have learned how to do it, and it can be done. But it does make it a little bit more difficult if you have a guitar that's not easy to play is also very important, but also comfortable with your body, I can remember before I moved out here to California, I had a guitar shop in Central Illinois, and you'd always get the parent who would come in and say, well, I don't think I'm gonna spend a whole lot of money on this because I don't know if they're gonna stick with it. You get that all the time from a parent. And I heard that for years and years and years, and I tried to be nice about answering that, nicer. And then finally I got to the point where I was saying, well, if you don't buy a decent guitar, they're not going to stick with it. And I would let that hang out in the air for a minute, and then people would think, wow, well, I don't really want to waste my money, right? So having a guitar that's really easy to play and a guitar that's comfortable for your body is super important. As I spoke about a little bit earlier, that comes into play also 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, as your guitar playing continues, because maybe when you buy your first guitar, all you want to do is spend that 10 minutes a day sitting on your couch and playing, and you're playing your favorite songs. That's all you do. Awesome. Do it, because it's important to life, right? To have music, to have a release like that. But if you are somebody who is like, wow, how do you get that sound on that guitar? And why does that small body guitar sound like that? And how can I do that? And I'm really interested this thing called fingerstyle. I never knew about that when I was a beginner. So 10 years later, you're listening to a record that you love and you realize that all that's on it is one guitar and a vocal, right?
Yeah.
Super exposed. But the guitar part is really intricate. It's not somebody just strumming four beats to the measure, like on a lot of songs. It's somebody who's actually getting inside of it and playing arpeggios, playing single notes, playing altered tunings. And your mind, as a musician, you had no idea about that stuff when you began. So that's kind of what I was thinking about as time goes on. Your ears get better. You
Yeah.
start to crave new sounds, and hopefully your playing gets better too. And so when you were a beginner and all you were thinking about was, well, I really like the color of that guitar, or I like the way it feels to me. You weren't thinking about stuff like that. But that's the cool thing about music and playing guitar is that you get better. Your ears get better over time. You can hear things that you couldn't hear when you started, and if you pay attention, you grow as a musician, as a guitar player.
Cool.
So, is it truth that the shape of the guitar actually makes the sound?
Definitely. It has a lot to do with it. And I've got three shapes here, Jay. I've got one of our grand auditorium models. I have a grand concert guitar, which is the smallest body we make, and I have a new Grand Pacific guitar. And it's really kind of easy to hear the differences in those guitars. And there are, because of what I said before about design elements, there are certain things that the person who is listening the person who's listening to the instrument can actually grab onto, and that might really resonate with somebody, right? And but before I forget, a little bit off subject, I can remember so many times showing guitars to beginners, and they would say, "Man, I don't know why, but I really like this one."
Yeah.
Because of all the things I just said, they love music. Maybe they went to their friends. People are sitting around playing guitars. And they're like, man, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to learn how to play this song. They don't know about all the things that we can really nerd out on, right? But so, and when somebody would say to me, I don't know why, but this one just feels right, I would be like, that's your guitar.
You got to get that one because you're going to want to play it.
It's all about a vibe, right? You don't go to Best Buy and try three Macs, three MacBook Pros and say, man, this one's really cool, right? You might pick one that's gold or red or it has other hardware, stuff. But the guitar is an instrument where it's one of the few instruments where you're actually playing a string with your finger if you want to, and the other part of the string is touching your finger and making sound. There's a complete connection to the instrument. So even if you're a beginner, you don't know why you like something, but it just feels good on your body, pay attention to that. Always pay attention to that, because that just means that you're zeroed into something that you don't understand but is really important.
There's a comment over here that I wanna point out, and it's from Melina. I'm a pro, and I'm still looking at the guitar, how they look, more so than how they sound. Which is I had this back to Bob Taylor. I had a conversation with him the other day about the same thing. Sometimes when you fall in love with something, it's about how it feels, right? So you're talking about that, right? But sometimes I've had one that it might be a grand concert that is regular natural spruce top, and then a grand concert that may have a sunburst on it, and I might the one with the burst on it might make me feel better, right? So
Yeah.
it goes into it's tactile. It's something you can hold and you want to feel good. So I agree with you. Hey, if the guitar's got to look good on you as well as the way it feels, hopefully it sounds good.
Completely agree.
We have
I think that's part of it. I mean, you gotta like the way it looks. You gotta like the way it feels. You gotta like the way it sounds. That's all related to making you feel a certain way, for sure.
Oh, we got a left-handed question. We'll get to that. Sharp, get to that one real quick. But let's go back into guitar shapes because that's what we're here to talk about. So, so the basics. How, why is it, or what makes the shape of the guitar actually make the sound? Do you know the science, or do I need to get into, 1-800 phone a friend and call Andy Powers?
We don't have time for that tonight.
He's going to be in 2 episodes. You guys got to stick around for that one.
That's a recurring series. The short answer is that the size of the body dictates a certain amount of resonance and a certain amount of air volume that an acoustic guitar can generate. Okay, and so it's only logical that a big guitar is going to have more emphasis towards low end and fundamental bass power, and a medium-sized guitar is going to be a little bit more balanced towards low end and high end, and a small guitar is going to be super focused and take up less sonic. We have this term sonic space, right? Sometimes when you're sitting in a room and you're playing a guitar and you're just by yourself and you just want to make noise and make sound and bash, man, that big guitar feels so good, right? Feels good on your chest. You can sing loud, you can express yourself. But when you take that same guitar, as a guitarist, if your journey is leading you to a place where, man, I want to start recording music, right? If that happens, then you're like, you put that big guitar in front of a microphone, and you're like, that doesn't sound as fun as it did in the room, right? So this is what I'm talking about. Some of these things come into play over time for different people. And if you're the person who buys that guitar because, like she said, she loves the way it looks, and she loves the way it sounds, and you sit there and you play with your buddies once a month, every weekend, whatever, and you're so happy that you have that guitar, awesome, perfect, you made the right choice. But if you have gone on a little further and you're wondering how to fit that guitar into my recording or my band in a live situation, right, then there's other things to think about.
I got it. Well, how's this? So we touched on some basics, some bare bones basics of guitar shapes and why they affect the sound of the guitar. You want to start walking through some of the guitars that we have,
Sure.
that you have over there in your, where are you? Is that your recording studio?
Yes. Oh, it's my front room, Jay. Where are you?
Awesome. I commandeered a corner in one of my daughter's rooms here on quarantine.
Nice.
But
I have a little bit of recording set up in my front room, and so I'm lucky, and it's something that I love to do. I love the process, so it's I don't get enough time to do it, but it's what I do sometimes. So yes,
awesome.
What we're gonna do, we have 3 guitars here, and if you remember, if we go back to the original equation, body shape, tone, wood, player, we're gonna try to take two of those points, two of those titles out of the equation, because what we have is one player, right? And we have 3 guitars with the same exact tone woods, but different body shapes. So we can really focus on one part, which is what we're talking about tonight, which is the shapes. So each one of these guitars I'm going to show are rosewood back and sides guitars, spruce tops. And all of these guitars are all solid wood instruments. The first one I've got here is a 414 CE. And the 414 CE is one of our most popular guitars. Actually, this body shape, the Grand Auditorium, is our most popular body shape. And the reason, I believe that there are 2 reasons for the popularity of this body shape. One is that it's comfortable for a lot of people to play because it's not a real small guitar, it's not a real big guitar. The second part of it, and this relates to your question, is because of the body shape, because of Bob's design of this body shape, which has been out since 1994, it's a real even and balanced guitar that works for lots of different styles. So somebody who, when they go to the guitar store for the first time, they're shopping and they don't know what style they like, they just want to play guitar, this is a good shape to think about. Any guitar that we make that ends, any guitar that we make, the model number ends in a 4 is a grand auditorium body shape. Very even and balanced, good for lots of different sounds. So that's what this guy is. And I'll play just a little bit on this guitar. And then without speaking about anything else, I'm going to switch to the next guitar and play the same exact thing. And hopefully you guys can hear this. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to this, if you really want to hear what we're talking about, put on some headphones, listen through some speakers if you can, because you're not going to be able to hear it through your phone, probably, right? So this is the 414 Grand Auditorium guitar. So hopefully Zoom is treating us well. It's always a hit or miss with audio stuff sometimes, right? But if you had a good feed there, you could tell that the second guitar that I picked up, which is called a Grand Concert or a Grand Pacific guitar, sorry, probably sounded a little fuller. It was a little louder. Definitely more information in the lower end. But not only that, to those of you who have been playing guitar for a while and perhaps have the environment to be able to hear it, the actual sound of the notes is different. And this is getting into the nerdy stuff. So I think that it's worth talking about because we're trying to address a lot of different musicians and guitar players out there. But This is a brand new design, the Grand Pacific, and it's a whole new sound for Taylor guitars. And we kind of talk about this guitar as having the notes, the attack, the sound of each note is a little bit more rounded. Okay? The first guitar I played, the Grand Auditorium, has a really crystal clear, immediate attack. And the notes you can almost imagine the notes on a Grand Auditorium as sounding a little bit more triangular in shape. And the notes on the Grand Pacific are a little bit more rounded. Another analogy that we might use would be that the Grand Auditorium guitar sits like you're sitting in front of a grand piano. But if you play that same voicing on a Wurlitzer or a Rhodes piano, that's kind of more like what this guitar sounds like.
Got it. And why is it?
Nerdy stuff. Why is that?
Yeah.
That's by design. I think that as a company, what we try to do is we know that what sounds good to you, Jay, I might say that's not my cup of tea. I'm a fan of a different sound. When we do road shows, lots of times we'll demonstrate 5 guitars at one time, and then we'll have people vote. Right? Who liked the sound of the GA? Hands go up. Who liked the sound of the Grand Concert? Hands go up. Who liked the sound of the Grand Pacific? Hands go up. If you have a crowd of 60 people at a road show, every shape that we have will get votes as being their favorite. So
and a lot of people double that up too. I've done a couple of road shows where they're like, you're doing the raise your hand thing and they do it twice. Like, those are both my favorite.
They're both.
You should get both. Yeah,
Sharp, you do something in your so Sharpie gives both Chris and I, when we're open to the public and we give factory tours, we have the ability to give. We are on the team that gives factory tours, and you actually do a really good job in the neck department discussing that right there. That tone is very subjective. It's what I like may not be what you like. Can you walk through that for people? And I know we're not going to have a lot of people that can raise their hand and say this is my favorite band, but I really think you do a good job of that when you explain it.
Oh yeah. So I always bring that up when we go into the neck department, obviously, and it's tone. So so when you're talking about different tones that you get out of different guitars, it's what might be good for one person and what they find to be an attractive sound that they're looking for isn't the same for somebody else. So I always do this thing. I'm like, who's the best band in the world? And I pick one person and they're like, oh, it's Led Zeppelin. And pick Stone over there. And they're like, no, it's the Beatles, you know, and they're both right because that's the best sound for them. Right.
Yeah, totally.
But but what isn't subjective is the playability and the comfort and all of that in a guitar. And that's what I always talk about where Taylor shines is like when I first picked up a Taylor, I was like, man, this guitar makes me sound better than I really am, you know. But you're not fighting against it because there are these unique different shapes to have what fits right for you and what plays to your style, you know. So each shape needs to have a little bit of love from everybody. Some people love all of them, and those are great Taylor advocates for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're right, Chris. There's certain things that are measurable,
Yeah.
and there's certain things that are completely floating around in the air, and you have to figure out in your own head what appeals to you. You know. Yeah.
For sure.
You guys are nerds. I love it. So Andy, you want to go to the next guitar that you have?
Yeah. So I'm gonna try to do one more demonstration, and I hope this can actually be heard on over our broadcast tonight. So I gave a brief description of the Grand Pacific, but this is a guitar with rounder notes, has a lot of sound, has a very strong output, and it has a particular voice. And I'm going to go to the next guitar is going to be a Grand Concert, which has its own has another voice, completely different. And I'm going to play just one little thing on the Grand Pacific, and then I'm going to play the exact same thing on the GC, and see if you guys can pick up on a little difference. Okay, here we go.
I think the class is still rolling.
Okay, so same player, same song, played the same way with the same tone woods. What do you notice? Sharp, you got headphones on. What do you notice?
The boldness of, out of the difference between those two guitars, right? So you can feel a little more of a boom coming through. I actually don't know which models you were going through, whether it was the GA and the GP or which ones you had. Was that the GC?
The first one I played was the GP, and the second one I played with was the GC. And what I could hear was that the melody on the song I was playing was actually louder and more in your face than the bigger guitar, right?
Well, yeah, in the Grand Concert, correct?
Yes,
Which is
yeah, right. So
because that's less body to transfer through, right? So like a lighter touch is going to lend to a smaller body in that sense. If you have a heavy attack on a Grand Concert, you might muddy out a little bit depending on the tone woods, but that's really going to be a great guitar for you if you're doing that light finger style or strumming lightly.
yeah,
It's less body to go through, so it pushes out nice and clear.
Right. So the lesson here is that a smaller body guitar takes less energy to get it to move air, to get the top to vibrate, to get sound out. So this is something to think about. If you're a player who is interested in fingerstyle music or just strums really lightly, you are going to get more volume out of a small guitar than a big guitar because it takes more energy from your strumming hand to get the big guitar to move. So
Yeah.
this is something that took me years to understand because your brain would think there's no way that can happen. How could that be? The other guitar is bigger. It's got heavier strings on it. How could the smaller guitar actually be louder? So this is some of what we really like to do at Roadshow, and that's one of the beautiful things about Grand Concert is that it takes up less space. So and it's small body. So if you're somebody who likes a smaller guitar, and let's say your journey has taken you to the point where you're starting to think about recording, or you're playing music at church, or you're playing music in the band, your guitar doesn't have to be so big. It shouldn't be, because the sound person is only going to take the bigness out of it. The bigness that you had going in your front room when you were smashing it, right, doesn't work in a live setting, doesn't work on a recording. So why not take care of that at the source, at the guitar?
Yeah, we got some good comments over here, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But what I noticed was the thing that I try and teach. I work with again, I manage content marketing, so I work with a lot of different artists, and I work with studio engineers and people producers working on records, and I always say you have to at least have one grand concert in the studio because they're smaller. You can do so many. They're a little bit more focused on the microphone, and they do really incredible things. The GP sounded familiar, but it did. The volume wasn't quite there. That bigger body, I can now see it in A/B test on how you would actually. The GC is actually a lot louder. It was a lot louder. We got a comment from Bill over here that said the GC seems brighter.
Mm.
Would you say brighter? I mean, they were the same tone woods.
I would say I agree with that, but what I would say is that the GP is rounder. I would, this is like, it's like wine. We're talking about wine and cheese, like the way that it hits your palate and the finish and in the beginning, and it gets a little nerdy and crazy, right? I think wine nerds and guitar nerds could probably have some really nerdy conversations, right? All right, but I think more about the way that Grand Pacific sounded was a little bit rounder and not as in your face, and a little bit mellower. I would use the word mellower. Yep. But that guitar shape is a completely different design, and it's just an example of the evolution of our company, always trying to come up with new ideas. And one of the things that you mentioned that you had Bob on the other night, and it always sticks in my mind, and I try to teach people too, is that Bob has, as you know, he has 1,000 great one-liners, and every time he delivers one, you're just like,
we need to make a book.
Yeah, right. But one of them is that his company, Taylor Guitars, is going to make their best guitar tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, he's like, next week we're going to make our best guitar. And so he's always brought that to the company, and he lives it. And luckily we and all the people who love to play our guitars benefit from that philosophy.
You know what?
So
I got a question that popped up in here that I wanted to touch base with Andy on. It was from Philip, and he asked, the Grand Symphony specs are so similar to the Grand Auditorium, and he says, do they sound the same? Is the GS like a GA but with no cutaway? Can you speak to that for a second?
Sure. The You mean the GP has no cutaway, or GS?
He is saying the grand. So I believe he's probably looking at both of those online. The specs are so similar. Is the Grand Symphony the GA body but without a cutaway? Can you just speak to those different models real quick and the difference in similarities between the two?
Yeah. So a grand auditorium and a grand symphony, right?
Correct.
Okay. So grand auditorium and grand symphony have exactly the same body depth size. They are the same length overall. The width of a grand symphony is slightly wider in the bottom bout. This is the bout of the guitar across here. This is the upper bout and the lower bout. And in the lower bout on a grand symphony, it's about a 1/4 inch wider. And that design just yields a little, and also the waist of the guitar, which is the section between the two bouts, is also in a different place. And it's moved up and it's moved out a little bit. And that basic, it's a great question because this is why we talk about shapes. That little change in the body shape yields a guitar that has a little bit more power. I think it has a higher volume dynamic range, a grand symphony does. And now we have a completely new sound for grand symphony because Andy Powers has redesigned that guitar this year, right, Jay? That guitar came out
This year, this year's a strange year, so we've lost track.
It's the longest year ever.
The weirdest year ever. And you know, before I get into answering that, all the people everybody who's watching, we really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with Sharpie,
cool.
myself, Jay, and Andy down here. If you just joined us, Taylor Primetime is something we're going to be doing weekly on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So come back, grab a beverage and hang out with us. This is going to be a good time. But the question was the new 816, the Builder's Edition 816, or a Grand Symphony, right, going forward, because we have a K26 that is not a Builder's Edition, but the new Grand Symphony was designed this year. And what a lot of people don't know, and this is fun because we can kind of air some dirty laundry. It's not dirty laundry, but it's fun laundry to shake out in the wind, is that we had all of our instruments like dialed in, the instruments that we were going to launch at NAMM this year. And in the 11th hour, Andy had this weird looking instrument. And if some of you know what I'm talking about, it's the 816 with the sound port cutaway. So from the back of the guitar, it looks like it doesn't have a cutaway. From the front of the guitar, it looks like it's scooped out. And you see a lot of like a scoop cutaway in ukuleles and different instruments. Guitar builders have been doing it in different shapes and ways in the past. And then Andy it's like he drilled a hole and put a hole in the middle of it. And we call that a sound port. And that's been done before, right? The dual aperture or the second sound port. But what hasn't been done before is Taylor's V-class bracing, a scooped cutaway, and a sound port. It's like a trifecta, right?
Right.
And yes, that guitar came out in January at NAMM. We launched that guitar, but it was really late to the game. I manage I make all of our video content, or I'm responsible for our consumer-facing video content, and I remember not having that guitar. As I'm driving to the video shoot, had to, creep by the shop at like 4:15 in the morning, I believe, one day, pick it up so that I could drive to Los Angeles and do the shooting. So, I mean, if you haven't had a chance to play that guitar, when I first saw it, I did exactly what all of you did. We all did. Don't get me wrong. We looked at that instrument and we went, huh, that's weird, right? And then Andy, who's just like this passion for building instruments, he takes that instrument back, and I'm sitting in his shop, and then he played it, And I went, no, I get it. I didn't get it. I didn't know what was happening with that instrument. And you know what? We're going to have another prime time, and we're going to have to bring that guitar on so that you can kind of really show it, because right now we're doing it zero justice.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
that guitar, woo, the 816 Builder's Edition 816 CE. Wow. That instrument's wild.
It's
So,
a super hi-fi experience where this you're almost like engulfed in sound because you feel like the sound that it produces is wider
yeah.
than what you're used
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, which was so crazy about that guitar when it came out too, because it totally goes against what we had just said a little while ago, because it is a big body guitar, right? But the light touch of that, the new 816, it sounds beautiful if you have a nice light touch on that guitar. So it's cool.
Okay. So, before we kind of start wrapping this up and taking some questions, um, thanks, Andy, for spending time with us, giving us the tone equation, um, talking about shapes and some basic stuff on how that works, going through each shape that you have there, kind of demoing that, and allowing us to hear it. So I hear a difference. I did. I heard a difference, and I'm hoping everyone out there heard a difference.
And if you
But
didn't hear a difference right then and you don't have headphones in, this is going to be on YouTube. So get some headphones when you get home if you're gone or whatever it is, and just come back and listen to that part, because it's cool.
yeah, we should timestamp that part in the description so we can let people know that's where we start the demo so people can really watch.
For sure.
But back to my question, Andy. I hear a difference, but again, does shape really matter?
Great. So, I think that the bottom line is that good music, good songs, real emotion can be transferred on any guitar by any brand, any shape, even if it's missing strings. If you think about it, Robert Johnson didn't have guitars anywhere near the guitars that we are talking about today. We're lucky that we live in a time when we can say, do I like grand auditorium or do I like grand concert? I mean, we're really privileged to be able to do things like that, right?
Yeah.
But that takes nothing away from the recordings that Robert Johnson made on junky guitars, right?
Correct.
And so we have this luxury now where we can actually sit there and contemplate and split hairs about it. But the reality is that somebody who is a good performer, it doesn't even need to be somebody who's a good performer. An emotion, a song can be performed on any body size, made with any kind of wood, and it can still reach its intended spot, which is to transmit that emotion. So it's really up to all of us to decide. Where are you on that journey? Does it matter to you or not?
Yeah.
If it matters to you, if you want to research it, you can go to roadshows, you can watch your show, you can go online, you can call Taylor customer service, you can ask questions. All those things are part of deciding how, if you want to live with a guitar for the rest of your life, or just part of it, or make it be part of your life. All of those things come into the picture.
Cool.
I love it. Hey, Andy, before we get into some questions, you want to play some music?
I would be honored to, sure. Sharpie. Oh, he's drinking. Sharpie, I'm going to play a tune. Which guitar should I play?
Let's do the GP.
Grand Pacific.
Yep.
All right. This is the Grand Pacific. Rosewood back and sides. This is the biggest body of the three that you heard tonight. And I have a friend named Michael Lilly. He and I have been working on a record for a long time. and he and I wrote this song together. And
He was actually he's in the comments right now.
uh-oh.
He was a second ago, so
Oh, no.
hopefully he's
Now
still
I'm really
watching.
nervous. Super nervous now. I'm going to play the song, which is untitled at the moment, but I'm going to give it a shot. This is the first time that I've tried to play the song live. So be nice to me in your comments.
On Zoom. On Zoom.
You always feel like a dream. Always you feel like a dream. I was thinking from a foreign land. How would you look in King Kong's hand? Right at home on the silver screen. I think about you all the time. I imagined a cabaret. Dance, drink and sweat and play. The band was hot, you were on fire. I think about it all the time. We took a chance and made a plan. There was need to understand. I took a breath, you took my hand. In the beginning of the getaway, under the Milky Way, all lovers leave their mark. But you always feel like a dream. Always you feel like a dream. Don't worry, stay for a while. And don't worry, stay for a while. 100 smiles, a couple years, 1,000,000 miles, 1,000 beers. So appears this storyline, and you always feel like a dream. Always you feel like a dream. It feels like home to me. You feel like a dream, feels like home. Don't worry, stay for a while. Don't worry, stay for a while.
Yeah, man. That was awesome. You know what? You never know how that's going to go, especially on Zoom, but I think you pulled it off pretty well.
Yeah, they were great.
I mean, you got a lot of thumbs ups. You got sounds awesome. Voice is nice. Voice nice too. That's
Thank
so
you.
great. What
Yeah,
else you got?
the Zoom thing is always a challenge because it gets garbled sometimes and you don't know why. But
especially, and you could also leave your reverb on all the time, and that would be awesome. uh,
Yes,
anyway,
I had a talent knob.
you got some a
Talent
10 out of
knob.
10 out here. And hey, thank you, man. Thanks for everybody watching. But let's get into some questions, and then we'll wrap up with Sharpie's question. We have a segment on this show called Sharpie's question.
We need
Sharpie's been here for 12 years
Sharpies
almost.
question.
We're working on the. Yeah, we need to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna figure out something. This is awesome. So, Sharp, you want to dive into some questions?
Yeah, I actually want to find it. Paul Casper had some good questions, and I'm biased towards his questions because he's left-handed. Um, so Andy, we'll bug you with this one on a lefty, and keep in mind you're talking to me and Paul, who are both left-handed. Does Taylor have a day or window where you make lefties? I'm curious how much it affects the rest of production.
We make all guitars left-handed. Sometimes it takes us longer to get them actually out into stores, and especially when there are new guitars, new models that are introduced. When we make a new model like the 816 CE with the sound port cut out that Jay just mentioned, it takes a lot of work to get our factory to be able to build that guitar. And eventually we will have a left-handed model of it. So there's always a little bit of a window where it takes a little bit longer to get the tooling actually made in the production facility to make left-handed models. But left-handed models are made every day in both of our factories, and there's no extra price for a left-handed Taylor guitar.
Yeah, I always love that. I believe one of Bob's first good right was for his brother-in-law who is left-handed. Is
Yep.
how that all went, and there is no extra charge for being lefty at Taylor Guitars, which is cool. And one thing that before I really worked at Taylor and learned all of that stuff was you you're not going to get the same sound if you just take a right-handed guitar and change out the nut and saddle and put strings on it as lefty. The inside of a guitar, of a lefty guitar, is mirrored completely, the bracing, all of that. So
Yes.
there is a ton that goes into making lefty guitars, and it is a shift in the way that we build that day if we're building left-handed guitars. So it's always appreciated by myself and everyone who buys left-handed guitars that Taylor doesn't tack that on to the customer. It's really cool.
There's also one more thing, Sharpie, that I'm sure you know about too, that if you just flip a right-handed guitar over, you've got a saddle that's going to be at the wrong angle. Mm-hmm. If you notice that the saddle is not square to the body, it actually has an angle, right? And this is to allow for proper intonation up and down the fingerboard. Intonation meaning that when your C chord sounds in tune, so does your G chord, and so does your D chord, and up and down the neck. If you flip it over, you're going to have a really wacky, it's not going to play in tune.
Yep.
It's another reason we have to make left-handed guitars.
Awesome. I got a question. I got one that came in from Philip. You talked a lot about comparing the GP and the GC. Does the sound of the GA compare to the GC?
Yes, I think that in a rapid fire sort of answer, the GA is going to have a little bit more volume. You're going to be able to hit it a little bit harder before it reaches its maximum volume output. One of the things we didn't talk about, I might have failed to mention also, is that the Grand Concert is a short scale guitar. So the distance between the nut and the saddle is about a ½ inch shorter than on all our other body shapes. And that has to do, that's a playing, that has to do, or that contributes to the playing experience quite a bit. There's less tension on a short scale guitar. But overall, I think you'll get a little bit more volume out of a GA. You'll be able to hit it a little bit harder. But you won't get that focus that you get from Grand Concert, and that ability to get, with the lighter touch, to get good volume out of the guitar.
Cool.
Thank you. Got another one, Sharp?
Ooh, I was looking at one from, let me see if I can find Jeannie's again. I had it up a second ago. Oh, here it is. So is one shape easier to play for a beginner or not? And is one shape better for finger picking than rhythm, etc.?
I think that goes back to the initial thing that we talked about tonight. Is one shape more comfortable for a player? I think that the size is what we're talking about. It also depends on how physically big the person is. If you're somebody who's shorter and you have smaller hands, it's going to be a little bit difficult to play, a little bit difficult to hold on to a bigger guitar. And your strumming arm is going to end up sitting up a lot higher than where it's comfortable to be. Now, this gets back to the question, Jay, does it really matter?
Does it matter? Does it?
I don't know. Does it? That's for everybody to figure out. Because you know what? I saw, as all of us, we've got a lot of time. We see all these amazing kids on YouTube now, right? I saw a bass player who was like 9 years old holding this massive P bass. Like he could barely get his hand all the way to the F, to the first fret. But he was completely shredding. And if you were to look at him, you'd say, dude, that guitar is too big for you. But if you just listen to him play it, you'd never say that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So I think to answer that question, finger picking, grand concert, grand auditorium would be my two first choices.
Awesome.
Cool.
Do we have any more questions in the feed, Sharpie?
Nothing that I caught.
I think we answered a lot as we went tonight.
Yeah, we did. So
Paul Tobias had a question.
Oh.
It just says, dude.
There you
So we'll go. Well, I read that wrong. It didn't.
Code.
Anyway, but we thank everybody for being in here. But this is the time of the show that we call Sharpies Questions. So Sharpie's been at Taylor for almost 12 years. He's known Mr. Lund, Andy Lund, down in the bottom here of your screen for a long time. Sharpie, what is your question for Mr. Lund tonight?
Andy, I got a shopping question for you tonight. Right now, obviously, in the world of buying guitars, it's a lot of online reading, reviews, whatever you might be doing, trying to figure out whether you're getting your first Taylor or that next Taylor, right? What would you recommend to somebody? What's the one thing that you would recommend they do prior to buying that guitar, or what should they be looking for in finding out which guitar might in this time where you can't really go into a shop and try out the guitar itself?
Good question. I think that there's a lot of content out there right now, and it's something that we, as long as I've been at the company, we've worked really hard to define our messages, and you can, like Jay said, you can make good music on any guitar, but you should consider how comfortable it might be to hold on to the guitar. I think that's very important. All our guitars play really well. All our guitars are super easy to adjust because of the new Taylor, the Taylor neck. So playability, that's a given. You're going to get that with the guitar. I think that you can search around for content. What I would say is that look at our website, look at our YouTube channel, hear the messages, and if you see a store that's saying the same thing, that's a pretty good indication that they know what they're talking about. If you get confused because the store is saying something different than what I read on Taylor's website, I don't know. All of a sudden, I lose a little bit of confidence with that. Our customer service department is a really good resource. Our customer service department can be emailed. You can set up an email thread with somebody. You can chat with them. You can call them on the phone, ask them for their advice. They're going to ask the same sort of questions that we were talking about. What style do you want to play? Are you a beginner? Have you played guitar before? What kind of music? Who are your favorite artists? What do they play? All those things. And then think about, if you're a beginner and if you don't know what fingerstyle means, figure it out. And then go, oh, okay, I do like that. Oh, these are certain guitars that might fit into that category. And I think that you'll you'll find that guitar if you do the research, if you listen to the content, if you spend the time, you'll find that guitar that you can sit on the couch with for hours and just and love it and drift away and be at peace with what you're doing.
Awesome.
We're getting some. Thanks, Andy. That was awesome. Sharpie, did he answer your question?
Did I? I hope so.
Yes, absolutely. And I hope that helped people in the comments. If somebody's looking to buy their first Taylor or their next one, if you heard that, I hope that helped you out.
I think we got two more questions or a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap this show up for the evening. Here's kind of an interesting one. We'll save Rob's question for a second. We're gonna go to Bill. Bill, I was thinking about getting a GS Mini Koa Plus. By the way, I have one right here. It's pretty amazing. What kind of sound will I get out of that? Well,
an awesome sound.
What kind of sound, Andy?
You're gonna get a guitar that, first of all, the GS Mini is a smaller guitar that has become almost iconic in the years since it's been released. It's almost its own brand, and we make many different flavors of that. We make different woods, but the Koa one is going to be it's going to be a little darker sounding than the guitars that I played today. And the main reason for that is because of the top. The top on the Koa Plus is a Koa top. And when you put a hardwood like Koa or mahogany, instead of a spruce top, you're going to automatically dampen some of the higher frequency. And you're going to get a guitar that's nice and mellow sounding, looks good, and is super comfortable to play. And I've only had the opportunity to play that guitar once, and that was in January at NAMM. But I know that to be true for all our Koa top guitars, that they're going to sound nice and warm. And that guitar will probably actually get a little bit darker over time because that's what Koa does.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that. And then we got another one that's pretty good, and then we'll wrap this show up for the evening. But here is good. What would happen if you switched a neck on a 310 to make a baritone? So are you asking if you took a baritone neck and you made it, how did that work?
Well, if you took a 310 neck and you put on baritone strings, it would be super floppy because the scale length, the strings would be like rubber bands.
Right.
Because the strings would not have the right scale length and have the right tension. But you might have the new sound, man. All this stuff is lots of, the things that are beautiful about music are mistakes, right? So who's to say that wouldn't be something cool could come out of that? Who knows? But I think it would be tough to play guitars, chords in tune, and it might be cool for like single note stuff, but it's not something that would be probably recommended.
Yeah, this guitar back here, we were doing it. We have a music project going on right now, so I have it in a really weird open tuning that I was using a couple of capos on and an ebow. So I'm not going to get into grabbing this guitar and playing you a chord right now because it's just not going to make sense.
That's going to be the entirety of the show on Tuesday, right? You're just going to be performing on that.
Yeah, that would be spectacular. But you know what? It's an awesome question, Rob, because Andy's right. There's so many different things you can do with guitars. Over here in this part of the room, I have this pedal board, and I was running that through this Boss synth pedal. I mean, it's an acoustic guitar through a synth pedal. That it all sounds weird, but like Andy says, do what you want to do. Make it might be really interesting, and if it is, send us a clip of it so we can hear it. Another thing is things like high stringing and stuff, and maybe we'll get into that kind of stuff. So where you take the octave strings of a 12-string set and you string it up on the 6 strings on a guitar. Some people call it Nashville stringing or Nashville tuning, but there's so many different things and so many sounds you can get. Speaking of that, next week, I guess we're gonna. It's already next week, Tuesday, May 26th. We're going live again with Mr. Lund and Mr. Sharpie up here in the corner, and the subject is going to be, what is the subject? Oh, what is the right acoustic guitar tone wood for me?
Mm.
We're gonna get into nerdy tone wood questions and discussion on tone woods. So, thank you all. Thank you all very much for joining us. Remember, this is going to be on our YouTube channel. You can reference it. We'll put some of those demo time codes in there so that you know where we demoed. And please share this with everybody. Let everybody know we're hanging out every Tuesday and Thursday on here. Sharpie, you got anything to say?
Thanks for hanging out with us, Andy. I mean, like I said, that was the first time I've seen you in months, so sight for sore eyes.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. Good to see you guys too. Looking forward to the next one.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We really appreciate it and hope you have a good night.